Sons by the Harlem Sappy Dwarf, Kevin Gonzalez, Gabriel Javier, Geovanny Lopez, and Diego Mendez. A quick biography of Crystal Williams. Crystal Williams was born in Detroit, Michigan in 1970. She went to New York University and received Bachelor of Arts, and went to Cornell University and received her Master of Fine Arts. She is the Associate Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer at Bats College. She is also a professor of English. Her work often appeared in the nation's leading journal and magazines. She was one of the 10 poets who were commissioned by the Museum of Modern Art to write poems as a part of an exhibit. Outcome. The outcome of her poem. Any poem of hers, you can tell by reading it that it comes from anger. The anger she has is to the white Americans because if we take a look in history, we see that the African Americans were being enslaved by the white Americans, and there was racism. But this day and age, we all try to set our differences aside and become one as a community. But due to recent events in America, we can see there is still racism and that we just judge people by their skin color. Thesis. Although there are other ways to show her anger about racism, she's using the form of art, which is poem, in an omnipotent way to send her message to the people. Object. The objective of her poem. In one of her poems she made, Identity, is all about trying to find oneself. Because from any age, we are trying to find who we are as a person, because we're always evolving. We cannot be defined by social media, we, our look, or our personalities we have around other people. We need to find our true, genuine self and show it to the world. She's encouraging everybody to find themselves and see if they want to see our society breaking apart due to racism. Thesis. Although people of different ages are having a hard time trying to find who they are, Crystal Williams' main big goal is for the people to find their own identity and realize that everyone is the same and equal since everyone is human. Tools. The tools of poem. In any of her poems, you will 100% find her using idioms from fissures and travesties. As mentioned previously, she's going to use her anger, rage, because we are just in an assumption that it is okay to restrict people for who they are or they want to be. They did not choose to become white, African, Asian, Hispanic, or and etc. She also used imaginative and space for people to escape from the world and rethink of certain situation. In her poem, she is using that hate to transcend. In a way, she is using that as a motivator to prove them wrong. Also, she's trying to encourage people that they have a voice. Although Crystal Williams is using her anger and rage to write her poems, she's also using that to be motivated to help out the voiceless to elicit and be happy who they are as a person.
Montoya helped found the Royal Chicano Air Force, which was a group made up of marginalized groups in his community. Montoya's poems helped shed light about the circumstances that were happening in his community. The community. In the poem, Montoya writes about his people and the pain they feel. He began to see the pain in everything, even in love, and he wanted to overcome this with his community and through his poems. Montoya saw his community all weakened and all full of pain, so he decided to do something about it, and through his poems and his drawings, he was able to inspire a movement to come together and repair the community. The object. Montoya's object was to show the pain of his race and community and transcend it. Through his poems, he showed the pain and obstacles they faced and how they were going to get over it. Montoya wanted to inspire others and bring to light the pain and injustices his community was going through, and although it took sacrifice and hard work, he was able to inspire his community to fight for what is right and was able to bring attention to the community and their pain. The outcome. In the end, Montoya and the RCAF amassed a following to help their community. He was able to influence people to join his movement. They started food banks, art programs, and libraries, and were able to reconstruct their community. Montoya and his art were able to change the lives of those in his community and the lives of those who were able to experience it, and it led to a beacon of hope and positivity to those communities that are faced with similar circumstances.
So, Octavio Paz. Octavio Paz was a Mexican poet living from March 31st, 1914 to April 19th, 1998. In his life, he won a Nobel Prize for impassioned writing with wide horizons, exemplifying humanistic integrity. Paz's family was ruined financially by the Mexican Revolution. Growing up, although he reared as a Roman Catholic, he was one of many that broke from the Catholic Church when he was still young. One aspect of Paz's work, often mentioned by critics, is his tendency to maintain elements of prose in his poetry. He published his first book in 1933 at the age of 19. Later, he went to Spain and participated in the Civil War there. Rules. For people of color throughout the 20th century, their life was infringed upon and many were condemned for their culture and forced to hide it. Adjusting to white customs and becoming whitewashed was necessary in quote-unquote blending in. It was not just artists who had been able to express what they were feeling, but peaceful protesters who too were able to gain the attention of the public. So, hence my possible thesis statement, just as in the Harlem Renaissance, Octavio Paz wrote the truth of struggle he had seen to portray the extent to which minorities had been forced to hide their culture and adapt to the social norms of white folk. You can really see this in his poem as he describes the growing sensation within himself of something like a tree, something mature and level-headed that calls him. Division of labor. Octavio Paz took the offensive against the norms and the rules of society and began to write the struggles of living in his time. Most similar to the Harlem Renaissance and many advocates for Chicano rights, Octavio Paz wrote about the struggle and how to express them beyond the lines of geography man has drawn itself. And my thesis statement is, as the result of multiple rising ups and efforts of protest, Octavio Paz and his work only fueled the questions of the many communities that are divided, forcing activists to take a stand. Subject. Some other people who were involved in the struggle for Chicano rights were the Brown Berets and Cesar Chavez, who were given the prerogative of being supported by President Kennedy. Octavio Paz was also responsible for expressing the struggles of the Mexican Revolution, problems people dealt with financially, and the Spanish Civil War, in which he participated in as well. My thesis statement is the extent to which major political figures had put in the effort to end racism or allow people to express themselves, although with the support of entire communities and young people involved in their communities.
Miguel Algarín, a very well-known Puerto Rican poet in the streets of New York, has become a living legend, a Latino icon, and as many know, the leading figure in the Nuyorican movement during the 1970s. Miguel is also known as a Nuyoriqueño, and in Spanish, Nuyo means that he is from New York, and Riqueño means that he is from Puerto Rico. He was born in Santurce, Puerto Rico on September 11, 1941, and moved with his family at a young age in the early 1950s. Becoming familiar with the lifestyle he lived in America, he went to school and got his bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin in 1963 and a master's degree in English literature from Penn State University in 1965. Miguel soon pursued his passion for literature and became a distinguished poet and critic with several books to his credit. He deeply connects with his ethnic identity throughout many of his works and has become a voice for the Puerto Rican community living in New York. Miguel's engagement in Nuyorican poetry takes place in New York. In a book review by Dale Manx, there is an explanation of poetical works done by Miguel and a colleague named Miguel Pinheiro, a Puerto Rican writer. In Mang's article, he states the following: "This anthology of poems by Puerto Ricans living in New York City covers a wide range of themes, but underlying them all is fears at the indignity of a life of poverty in a hostile society." As explained in this passage, the tone of Miguel is fierce anger, but at the same time it is bravery because he comes from Latin America and has to go through many struggles in the US. Not only the struggles of poverty, but also the struggles of injustices. Becoming a Latino icon a little after the Harlem Renaissance serves as an inspiration rooting from his earlier movement. As with all movements, there is usually a leader who gives hope to the people and leads them to fight or protest for what is right. But for Miguel, there is no protest going on. Instead, he takes initiative to take the Nuyorican movement into his own words and express them through poetry. Not only did he express it through poetry, but he also built and formed a cafe called Nuyorican Poets Cafe, where many Puerto Ricans can come together. In many of his works of literature, he gives hope and provides an inspirational connection between him and the reader. In other words, Miguel Algarin and his works of poetry has had a great impact on Puerto Ricans living in New York during the 1970s and still has a major impact as he has become a major influential writer portraying a sense of bravery and hope as he goes into deep connection of his identity, serving as a reminder to other Puerto Ricans to not forget who they are despite any circumstance. Rules. In another literary work by Miguel Algarin called Love is Hard Work, he celebrates the rich history and ethnic diversity as well as the neighborhoods, people, and streets. As a major influencer and icon, he has minimal restriction by society, but there are still injustices. In a YouTube video titled The Nuyorican Poets Cafe, they interview Miguel in front of the cafe, and he explains that one of his goals is to help Puerto Ricans find their way when they migrate to America. One of the major societal ideas that is a struggle for them is social injustice. As Miss Bernard Carreño explains, Nuyorican poetry mirrors the Black arts movement. Miguel's work serves as a picture of the lifestyle of Puerto Ricans, and therefore, he brings hope and a bright future to his community. In Love is Hard Work, Miguel Algarin connects himself to his Puerto Rican identity, but not only does he connect himself, he also celebrates the rich history with racial pride and ethnic diversity, as well as the neighborhoods, people, and streets away from their present social injustices. Subject. Many of those who are involved in carrying out the activity of the common goal of the Nuyorican movement are mostly Puerto Ricans living in New York. In serving their common goal, they bring all aspects of their lives together in unity, which include culture, socio-political activism, and street culture. They must not forget who they are and always respect their culture, and at the same time, they should engage in peaceful activism towards injustices. Street culture, such as music and street influence, becomes a part of their lives, showing that they also have freedom and rights. Other Nuyorican and Puerto Rican poets are also involved in this movement. The works by Miguel mark the importance of ethnic nationalism that bring the community together, and one major thing that helps is his tone. In conclusion, being closely connected to their national identity, many Puerto Ricans and poets have come together at the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, formerly started by Miguel Algarin, who was inspired by earlier movements in order to socially interact with one another as ethnic nationalism is critical.